Hello, everybody, and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Denver. I'm Gabby Sparks, joined by Luis Scott Vargas, and we're heading here into round 13. This is Paul Cheon versus Christian Calcano, and the matchup is going to be White Blue Flash versus White Blue Humans. Now, both players are currently 10-2, and what do you think we can expect from this matchup, Luis?
So Christian Calcano is playing the more aggressive of the two decks. White Blue Humans has a lower curve, and it is definitely more of a traditional beatdown deck. The deck that Paul Cheon is playing is a little bit more mid-range. It's the White Blue Flash deck that we've seen over the course of this weekend that has a lot of ways to generate card advantage and board advantage, but it's not really, I wouldn't really call it a beatdown deck.
So here we see Paul, nothing on turn one. Calcano with Smuggler's Copter. All right, so two Smuggler's Copters.
See, it's already turn two, and Paul has made what I believe is an egregious error.
Okay.
He's got a full art Zendikar Plains and then a Beta Island. So I don't understand how you could sleeve up both those cards in the same deck.
Doesn't he just average out to just okay by doing this?
No. That's not how it works. you get docked a ton of points by having mismatched lands, even if that Beta Island is actually pretty great.
It's fine, too, and everything. Calcano with that Selfless Spirit, getting into the Smuggler's Copter.
Also, I have it on good authority that Paul chose those lands in the hope that I would do commentary on one of his matches.
Oh, did he really?
Oh, yes. This was intentional.
That's great.
I don't know if that makes it better or worse.
I think it makes it, I don't know, actually. I appreciate Paul's desire to want to get under your skin. Since you are very good at doing it as well. Oh, this is just a mirror match right now. Selfless Spirit also getting into a Smuggler's Copter. Let's see what Paul loots away.
Yeah, and this is a good start for both players. I mean, it's a little better for Calcano because he, of course, was on the play, but it's still just, a pretty solid and advantageous start for either of them.
All right, so turn. Reflector Mage. And away goes that Selfless Spirit. We're going to see another loot.
In a fun bit of trivia, this is a matchup between two players I've never beaten, and I've played both of them a lot.
With Paul, you mean in like competitive level Magic, right? Because
for both of them, I mean at premier events, at Grand Prix and Pro Tours. In fact, I've played Christian Calcano something like 5 times over the last 2 years. And he's
are you
me
lifetime
every
05?
Oh, yeah.
Against the Calculator?
Do you know why they call him the Calculator?
I do not, actually.
It's because his last name's Calcano.
Oh, God. I thought you had a good story for me. Come on now.
Why would you think I had a good story for you?
That's true. That's, I guess, maybe my mistake. Westvale Abbey for Paul.
And with both players at 10-2, they need to either go 2-0-1 or 3-0 to make top 8. So this is an elimination match when it comes to their top 8 prospects.
So Gideon coming down for Paul, bringing a knight, and he's not attacking this turn. Looks like he wants to defend this Gideon.
And if Calcano had another creature to crew the copter, he could kill Gideon, but it looks like he may not have access to that. And because he didn't play a 5th land before attacking, he's not representing Archangel Abyssin, which would be very good on this board as well.
He does get to loot away another land. Oh, look at that. So the Stasis Snare is able to take down the Smuggler's Copter, and so he is going to be able to take down that Gideon.
Wow, that was a blowout in Calcano's favor. Not only did he trade Stasis Snare for the Copter, Gideon, all it did is make a knight, and this leaves Calcano with a pretty overwhelming board advantage.
Wow, is there anything that Paul could have done in the face of that? It looks like that sequence of events is just going to be so punishing.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for him to combat that. Calcano being on the play and having Reflector Mage made Paul's life a lot more difficult. And one of the features of Blue-White, unfortunately, is that it is not very good at playing from behind. A lot of its cards, like Spellqueller, like Gideon, they tend to be better when ahead, not when you're behind.
So another land for Paul. The Selfless Spirit makes an appearance again. Nothing for now. It does look like he has a Spell Queller in hand. Selfless Spirit jumping into that Copter. An Income Reflector Mage and the Smuggler's Copter.
And Paul lacking enough white mana to play Stasis Snare this turn, so the only card he's really representing is Spell Queller. So Calcano has a pretty big incentive to not play into it right now.
All right, so it looks like the Selfless Spirit and the Knight are jumping in front of the Reflector Mage. So down goes the Reflector Mage and the Selfless Spirit. And the Smuggler's Copter is doing really good work for Calcano. He's so far discarded 3 lands.
Yeah, it's making it so he's just got access to tons and tons of spells.
You know, the Spell Queller is going to be able to ambush that Smuggler's Copter.
Actually, things aren't looking too bad for Paul now. The fact that he was able to Spell Queller a Smuggler's Copter and now he untaps and has the ability to play a Reflector Mage means that he could get in a situation where he Reflector Mages Calcano's Selfless Spirit. Calcano can't replay it next turn and has just 2 Copters in play with nothing to crew them.
All right, so Reflector Mage bouncing the Selfless Spirit. Paul attacking for 4. Follow up Selfless Spirit, and a very nice turn there for Paul, using all his mana as well.
Yeah, now Paul has 4 creatures into play. To Calcano's essentially 0.
Wow. Thalia's Lieutenant when there are no other humans out there is feels bad.
Not the most impressive, but it does enable Smuggler's Copter, which draws Calcano into more and more threats. So also note that Paul kept a land in hand. He intentionally didn't play it last turn, and part of the reason for that is that with Smuggler's Copter in your deck, you really have incentive to just keep excess lands in hand.
How many lands do you feel like Paul needs to have before he's just fine discarding anything in excess?
The only reason Paul would play land now is if he wants to activate Westvale Abbey, but he can always just play his land and do that. I would expect him to play up to 5 lands and just keep the 6 in hand until he feels a specific reason to play.
Sure, fair enough.
Do you think it changes Paul's incentive to play the land, whether if it's a beta one? Do you think he's more likely to want to play it or
just like I
it?
want everybody to see my 6 lands? No, I'm sure that's not what he's thinking about at all.
Oh, those aren't Paul's islands. Those are literally mine.
They are actually
He's staying
yours?
at my house and he took them.
No, I'm aware of that.
Without me knowing. I'm not even kidding.
So what, did he just take out his whatever Zendikar islands he would have had otherwise? That's awesome.
Obviously the plains aren't mine. Those are Paul's, but
Yeah.
the islands do belong to me.
I do like the Zendikar lands. You're so mean. Smuggler's Copter to follow up, and Paul has really turned this game around. It seemed earlier in the game after that Stasis Snare, it was like he was very far behind, but
Yeah, Paul's in actually pretty good shape now. Part of it is that Calcano's got a lot of Smuggler's Copters and not enough things to crew them in an effective manner, and the Spell Queller plus Reflector Mage, I mean, these are like big decision makers. So it does put Paul in a position where he's actually pressuring Calcano, despite the life totals on both sides being pretty low.
so Christian attempting to cast a Selfless Spirit.
And Paul with a Stasis Snare in hand, which is going to be a pretty good play this turn. If Calcano tries to attack with a Copter, you can Stasis Snare it. If Calcano just passes, Paul could use his mana to Stasis Snare end of turn and just exile the Selfless Spirit. And here's where we see vehicles on defense being a little bit less impressive, where they still provide blockers, but remember earlier when Paul animated Smuggler's Copter and it got Stasis Snared? You end up using multiple creatures to provide one blocker, and that can be a risk.
Oh, wow. So Paul attempting to Stasis Snare, but that Revolutionary rebuff prevents him from doing so.
Yeah, that worked out for Calcano. You talked
How
about...
much does that help?
Well, it kind of gets him back into it, because one of the advantages you talked about earlier was that Calcano looted away a bunch of lands. Well, Calcano's actually had almost every single turn where he just plays one spell, and getting to play 2 spells in the same turn, one of which traded for Paul's rebuff, or Paul's Stasis Snare, was pretty effective.
So Paul drew a Thraben Inspector for the turn and immediately cracked that clue.
So if Paul attempts to attack with everything, that does not work out well for him on base, right? Because Calcano animates two copters, goes block copter, block spell queller, goes to one but gets to sack Selfless Spirit so he doesn't lose anything, or just trades away one copter and then gets a copter back off Selfless Spirit. Actually, that's not too bad because, Calcano would go to 3, Calcano would go to 1, but the advantage for Paul is that he could also, if he wants, sacrifice Selfless Spirit, putting Calcano to 3 instead, but only losing a Selfless Spirit instead of losing 2 things and keeping Spell Queller alive.
Do you think that's worth it?
It puts the pressure on Calcano to find another blocker next turn, but I think that Paul has an advantage right now because he has Westvale Abbey and he's so close to winning that if he just has a turn or two of using Westvale Abbey, Calcano is going to be pressured to be adding to the board every turn, and if Paul draws spells, then he has more options. So basically, if Paul draws spells, he can play those, and if he draws nothing, he can use Westvale Abbey.
Sure.
Whereas if Calcano bricks on a draw step or 2, he's just dead.
Paul does have that last Spell Queller in hand. He even had the Lenta match it.
Paul also has to worry about an all-out attack, leaving him vulnerable to dying to Calcano's 2 Smuggler's Copters on the way back. So if he just attacks with everything, then the 2 Copters come in. That does not work out well for Paul.
All right, so Declaration of Stone targeting that Spirit. And there comes the Spell Queller. Oh, and another Revolutionary Rebuff? Damn.
That was a good sequence for Calcano. That Spell Queller would have basically won Paul the game, but getting rebuffed meant Calcano was able to, on 4 lands, operate very efficiently.
So now he has a choice if he wants to sack the Selfless Spirit or not. Do you think he wants to, or get the clue?
My inclination is to just get a clue, but it depends. He has to figure out how is Calcano attacking. If Calcano attacks with 2 Copters, the problem is if Calcano attacks with 2 Copters, Paul blocks with 1 Copter and doesn't. Oh, it does have lethal on the way back still, so Calcano's not going to be able to do that. So yeah, Paul can just let it get exiled.
So he does, and he's going to get a clue. But he does crew that Smuggler's Copter on the way out.
How selfless.
He takes one for the team.
Oh, yeah. So we have a situation where I think Paul has a significant advantage here because he's got an extra clue. He gets the first draw step. He also has 6 lands in play to Calcano's 4, and he has Westvale Abbey. And which means if neither player is attacking, Paul has way more advantages. And if players start attacking, Paul has enough of a board presence that Calcano's not really going to be able to leverage a great attack because neither player can attack all out without dying on the backswing, but Paul's just getting extra value every single turn from his Westvale Abbeys or clues.
All right, so Paul kicking things off by cracking that clue. Wow, this has been a very delicate game.
One of the things I like about this, like with these like white-blue, quasi-mirrors, because the decks are both slightly different, is that the games are really swingy. Cards like Reflector Mage and Spell Queller and Gideon and Stasis Snare all swing boards pretty quickly. And it's really cool just seeing, it going from one player, looks like they're winning by a lot, to the other player, crushing.
Oh, Reflector Mage.
That's a good one.
Let's see what it's going to bounce. All right, so it's the Spell Queller, giving him that Copter back. Paul is crewing the Smuggler's Copter on the way out.
And see, now cards like Reflector Mage. Now Calcano goes from having slightly fewer creatures to now having 3 creatures and 3 vehicles against 4 creatures, or 3 creatures in a vehicle, because it was just a 2-card swing getting rid of that Spell Queller, even though it will be back later. Though once you do that, you are kind of priced into not playing into Spell Queller, and you do know that. Calcano choosing to loot with no cards in hand. What do you think about that?
Doesn't really have a choice. Away goes Selfless Spirit and the Key to the City. Key to the City main deck. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Calcano, the more aggressive versions tend to play one of those.
You just want to give yourself a little bit more outs against Delirium and stuff.
Yeah, and if Calcano had chosen not to loot, he would have drawn that Key to the City. It would have been pretty good here. Paul getting to loot, but Paul's actually drawn like 3 land in a row, which means that he's actually now under pressure to find an answer right away. So that Reflector Mage was just a huge swing.
Oh, he found a land. I think he's on all lands.
Did Paul just draw 4 lands in a row?
I think so. Oh, no.
And Paul's got to be dead now because if he gets attacked by 2 smugglers copters, he needs 2 answers, and he's got the spell caller, but he needs to have like a stasis snare, and even then he's got a chump.
All right, so it looks like 2 humans jumping into those copters. This time he can actually, well, I guess he was looting before too, but he can actually do card selection this time. And yep, that is Christian Calcano taking game 1 here versus Paul Cheon. That game was so swingy. It went from one player looking like they were doing great versus coming back, stabilizing once again.
Basically, when you have a deck full of these like tempo cards, like Reflector Mage, Spell Queller, you end up having just wild swings based on who plays the last Reflector Mage or who plays the last Spell Queller.
All right, so moving over to Ben Rubin versus Matt Severa. This is Teamer Etherworks versus Mardu Vehicles, and both players are currently at 11-1. Now, Matt Severa is up a game now, so these players have gone post-board. And any thoughts on what we can expect from this matchup, Luis?
Well, the Mardu Vehicles deck gets to pressure the Etherworks deck pretty well, and one of the distinctions of Matt Severa's deck is he's playing 4 colors for Ceremonious Rejection in the sideboard, so you see that Spire Bluff Canal enabling that.
Yeah, it's funny because it's called Mardu Vehicles, but it definitely has a lot in the sideboard in terms of blue cards to play and Spire Bluff Canals that also can be a little taxing on your mana base as well.
Yeah, I think the term we're going with is Wet Mardu.
Let's not do that.
Cultivator's Caravan is a key to this deck because not only does it provide all 4 colors of mana, well, I guess the 5th too, but you don't need that.
Yeah.
It also is a vehicle for all your synergies. It's an artifact for your Toolcraft Exemplar, a vehicle for your veteran motors, that sort of thing.
The deck also does play quite a number of 1-drops, so you can go turn 3 Caravan into a 1-drop. Oh, wow, so a Kozilek's Return is actually going to take both of those out. And Cultivator's Caravan to play a Thraben Inspector. Bring a clue and back to Ben.
Kozilek's Return, effective sideboard card against the deck full of 1 and 2 drops.
Kind of disappointed that Ben isn't playing some awesome, insane brew
Yeah.
that we've never seen before.
Ben Rubin in the Hall of Fame and known for playing very unique decks. So I'm not surprised that he's playing on the Team Etherworks deck because many members of his team, the Pantheon, are. But he has been known. I mean, he came in second at Grand Prix Oakland with a 64-card standard deck.
Jesus.
So actually, at the beginning of this year.
All right, so Marvel down for Ben, and he does have enough mana to spin this.
Wow, the turn 4 Marvel with 6 energy. Not an easy draw to get, but a bunch of attuned with ethers and ether hubs does actually get you there.
How much better do you think Mardu Vehicles gets post-board versus Team Etherworks? Like, I guess adding Ceremonious Rejection is big game.
It is, especially since it also can counter Kozilek's Return because it is colorless.
Oh, yeah.
So it ends up countering a lot of the cards that matter in the matchup, and it's only for only 1 mana. So I do think that it ends up being better for the Mardu Vehicles deck once you move to sideboard.
So Thalia, Heretic, Cathar.
And that gives Ben incentive to use his Marvel in response so whatever he gets doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. On the other hand, if he hits Ulamog, he's not unable to Ulamog the Thalia because she won't have resolved yet. So,
Which one do you think might be better?
I think given the fact that Ben's at a pretty high life total, I think letting Thalia resolve makes the most sense.
And it looks like it has resolved because that Thalia is jumping inside of the Cultivator's Caravan. All right. Ben is going to activate the Marvel. Let's see what's inside. There's a Kozilek's Return, another Marvel, an Ishkana, Harness Lightning, 2 Harness Lightning. Now, it's tough to see the graveyard, but it doesn't look like there's Delirium.
No, not yet. So Ishkana would just be a 3/5, though. No, I guess she's not really big enough to block the Caravan even next turn because Thalia is going to make her be tapped this turn.
Yeah, so instead he's just opting for that Kozilek's Return. That does kill the creatures that aren't the Caravan.
And Caravan has a high enough crew cost that it's not a guarantee that Matt will be able to crew it next turn.
Matt playing another land for the turn. He does have a Scrap Heap Scrounger in hand.
And that will do the trick.
Okay, Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot is another shot for Ben to activate the Marvel once more. So he's playing it and cracking it immediately.
See if he wants to main phase Marvel or not.
Looks like he's choosing to wait. And Matt seems a little bit flooded.
Yeah, one of the things about the Marvel Vehicles deck is that when it does not draw Smuggler's Copter, when it draws 5 or 6 lands, it ends up, with not a lot to do with those extra lands. The clues do help.
So clue number 1, drawing another card for Matt. So here's a Scrounger. Yep, it's jumping immediately into the Caravan and attack. Now let's see what Ben reveals off of this one.
And Matt just has to attack and hope the Marvel whiffs. There's no real way around that.
It's whiffing right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it whiffed.
We're looking at Vessel of Nascency or Servant of the Conduit. Maybe a Kozilek's Return, but that's not even that good against a Scrap Heap Scrounger. So, yeah, that's not great for Ben.
What do you think you take here of your Ben?
I kind of like taking Servant of the Conduit because it gets you 2 energy when it comes in. Then if you chump, it gets energy. But if Ben has enough mana, Vessel, and I think Ben has Ishkan on hand, so Vessel could get him.
He does have one.
Towards Delirium. So actually, no, but Servant chumping also gets you Delirium. So I like Servant chump, then play Ishkan on your next turn.
Okay. So Servant coming in, 2 more energy. And chump, dead, energy, Delirium.
Yeah, and Ben's going to get another spin with this Aetherworks. I mean, it's even though he's whiffed twice, the cool thing about Aetherworks is every time you whiff, it gets you closer to not whiffing because you're putting cards that are not Eldrazi on the bottom.
All right, and this match looks like it's still going to take a little bit of time, so let's move back to our main match for now. So once again, this is Paul Cheon versus Christian Calcano, and Calcano took the first game. You see a Smuggler's Copter to start things off, and another one from Calcano. Christian thought that was a Fragmentize.
Yeah, he was ready.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Paul still technically could Fragmentize this turn. So what Paul's deciding now is whether he wants to play a land and crack the clue before attacking with Smuggler's Copter, because he's not going to be able to play anything else to the board unless he draws another Smuggler's Copter exactly. But there's a possibility that he's got enough cards in his hand that he doesn't care about, that he's fine just discarding one of those cards.
I think he just drew the Fragmentize, by the way.
He did. Fortunately, doesn't have an untapped white source right now.
So he is discarding the Stasis Snare, just playing an island and passing back. How important is Fragmentize in the mirror?
It's just a good value card. It kills Smuggler's Copter and kills Stasis Snare, and that's enough to make it worth including.
So Thalia Heretic Cathar. Paul says okay. She's going to get into the Copter. Kalkan is going to loot.
And between cracking the clue end of turn, Paul's draw step, and then his Smuggler's Copter draw, he's got a good chance of finding more white mana, and he has to figure out exactly, what his next turn is going to be, but it may involve casting a Fragmentize on that Copter.
All right, so he's going to crack the clue and draw for his turn as well. It looks like he's found an Archangel Avacyn.
So Paul now on 5 white cards in hand. He really needs to draw planes.
And we found a Spell Queller.
Yeah, I guess that's not exactly what he wants, but well, Paul's got a pretty solid hand, though, because he can still cast Spell Queller, Fragmentize. It looks like he might have a Reflector Mage, too. Well, we'll see. And Paul's gotten the first Copter hits in, so even though the life totals are very similar, Paul technically is a turn ahead on the race.
So he is discarding the Archangel Avacyn. It is very far away from being cast.
So one advantage of playing this Reflector Mage here is that Paul really wants to play Fragmentize on a turn where he can play another spell, because if he draws an untapped white source and can go Fragmentize, leave up Spell Queller, that's a huge turn.
And it looks like that is what he's setting up. And this is one of the main differences here between White Blue Flash and White Blue Humans, right? It looks like Kalkana's deck is just much lower to the ground. So Town Gossipmonger making an appearance.
And we didn't see that really come into effect in game 1. Calcano played most like a blue-white flash deck that had a random Thalia's Lieutenant,
Yeah.
but
they played almost identically.
Yeah, but the combination of Smuggler's Copter and Reflector Mage is still a pretty good one.
So Kalkana just adding it to the board once again with a Smuggler's Copter. And let's see what Paul can do this turn. Did he find white mana?
I think he found another Spell Queller. So Paul could just pass the turn here, and then he could leave up Queller, and then Kalkano has some incentive to play cards if he wants to develop his board, though. Look, both players on 3 lands, and with 3 lands in play only, there's not that many cards Kalkano can play at instant speed, so I don't know how he's going to get around playing into that Spell Queller very easily.
How concerned are both players about the Spell Quellers?
Both very aware of it, and Kalkano has fewer flash cards because he's playing blue-white humans, so he's got a lot more sorceries, which means that Paul leaving up Spell Queller mana is more advantageous for Paul than it would be against like a normal blue-white flash deck.
By the way, Matt and Ben are now 1-1, so they're going to game 3.
Yeah, Ben ended up winning. Probably hit off that Marvel eventually.
Yeah. He had a lot of ways to keep buying it back. He had drawn a Servant of the Conduit in the last turn that we saw, and he was already at 4 energy too, so continuing to activate it. So Paul just playing that Spell Queller.
Well, Kalkano played around Spell Queller by playing nothing. Because Paul has 2 Spell Quellers, he just ran one out to play to the board. He just has too many cards to not use that mana. But if I'm Kalkano, I really see Paul playing that Spell Queller as an indication he's got another one. It's pretty hard to imagine him playing out Spell Queller and not having access to a second.
Yeah, I was going to say, are your spidey senses tingling?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Paul, again, no land, just pass.
You may be considering attacking with Smuggler's Copter here. One of the advantages of trading with Smuggler's Copter for Kalkano's Smuggler's Copter is that it gives Paul an extra loot, which, I mean, granted, it gives both players a loot, but it gives Paul an opportunity to hit an untapped white source, and then Paul can play Fragmentize on the last Copter. So that could be pretty good for Paul.
All right, so Kalkano has found another land.
But look, Kalkano played around that Spell Queller last turn, didn't play anything, but he had no instants either, so he didn't use his mana either. That wasn't great for him. He's just gonna wait, and now Paul's not gonna pull the trigger on the second Spell Queller.
This looks like a game of chicken in some ways. Paul Cheon with an interesting choice of an island there. I believe that one gets a pass according to you.
Yeah, the Bucket Island's good. And here's the payoff for Kalkano. Now that he's hit 5 mana, he can play 2 spells in the same turn. So he can lead with a weaker spell. If Paul Spell Quellers it, Kalkano plays a better thing. And then if Paul doesn't Spell Queller whatever this 2-drop is, Kalkano just doesn't play another thing this turn.
All right, so let's see how the sequence of events go. Key to the City. Now, how important is Key to the City in this board?
It's actually not that great. Paul may Spell Queller it because he's got nothing better to do, but with Paul at 17 and Kalkano's creatures all having 2 or 3 power, I don't think that Paul's worried about dying right away to it or anything like that.
So let's see what ultimately Paul wants to do about this Key to the City. There you see that Spell Queller all the way on the right. Yep, he's going to go ahead and quell it. Kalkano says sure. And now he has a window. Thalia coming back down. How do you think that sequence went for Kalkano?
It was good. Thalia's not the end of the world here for Paul, so I'm not too unhappy if I'm Paul. In fact, things are about to get a lot better for Paul. He's found his second planes.
There you go.
So now Paul's got some options. He can, again, hold Fragmentize to wait till he draws another land and still play 2 spells in the same turn. Oh, wow, that was the fastest I've ever seen a Gideon hit a graveyard.
Yep. Gideon Emblem.
And so what that lets Paul do is he could actually just animate Smuggler's Copter and attack with both Spell Quellers and Smuggler's Copter. Kalkano would have to double block to kill any of Paul's creatures, and even if you double block the Spell Queller with Key to the City, I don't know if Paul cares too much about Key to the City happening.
Yeah, looks like this was a really big game for Paul.
Well, he didn't end up utilizing the emblem in the most aggressive fashion. I think he only attacked with the Reflection Mage.
Not as aggressively as he slammed it and immediately made an emblem,
yeah,
that's for sure.
He did have no hesitation there.
I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted to do with it, but yeah, just a Reflector Mage getting in. So land number 6 for Kalkano.
Calcano has gone from having too few lands and waiting to deploy his spells to actually having a few too many lands, because now, sure, he can play his last couple cards, but Paul's got a pretty overwhelming advantage, and even the stasis snares in Calcano's hand are not going to solve his problems here.
So if you're Calcano, how are you going to try to finish this game? Looks like you're falling behind, right? It's been slow, but you're definitely falling behind.
Part of the problem for Calcano is, first of all, it's going to be hard to win a long game against a Gideon Emblem. All of Paul's creatures are just that much better, and they're playing a lot of the same cards. Second, Calcano's playing Thales Lieutenant and Town Gossip Monger, cards like that don't age well. They're not as good in a long game as the more intrinsically powerful cards in Paul's deck. So there's multiple reasons why Calcano doesn't want a long game here.
Yeah.
But he's not pressuring Paul, so I don't see things changing all that soon.
Do you think there was a benefit to trying to be more aggressive earlier in the game?
It was hard because Paul always had slightly more creatures than Calcano. For a lot of the game, Calcano had 2 copters and 1 creature that could crew them. So that just did not work out great for Calcano.
All right, so Calcano here with Stasis Snare, trying to take that Spell Queller. It does. He gets Key to the City back.
And Key to the City not that critical on this board where Paul's at a very high life throw, and Calcano, since he's played out all his lands, doesn't have a lot of extra cards to discard.
Untap and draw.
And part of the reason this game is so interesting is that both players were stuck on 3 lands for a while, so both players got time to accumulate a bunch of resources.
Oh yeah, they were staring at each other for a while.
So they both have a lot to work with, which makes things, more interactive.
All right, so the Town Gossip Monger coming down. This definitely seems like one of the least impactful cards that Calcano has in the matchup. Stasis Snare from Paul.
Likely being aimed at that Thalia.
Yep. And away she goes. It looks like he might have drawn a Sky Sovereign.
Ooh, the console flagship?
There it is. Yeah, it is the boat.
Oh, yeah. Paul was already in very good shape this game, but Sky Sovereign puts him into an even better position. It can just eat one of Calcano's creatures every turn.
All right, that Reflector Mage continuing to get in.
Calcano could trade a Town Gossip Monger for it. Now he can block, flip it to Incited Rabble, and actually pump it twice.
I think that's what we might see, yeah. So he gets to flip it. And pump, and yep, down goes Reflector Mage and also the Gossip Monger. Does tap him out though, so Paul here has an opportunity to play Sky Sovereign. Yep. And these players are going to go to a game 3.
Yeah, that was enough for Calcano. He did not need to see more.
I mean, Paul Chion was going to win that game in the long run, for sure.
I have trouble imagining someone saying that sentence and being serious.
Oh,
but
come on. You're happy for him. I know that.
All right, maybe a little. Even though he stole my islands, I'm all right, with Paul taking that game.
So generous of you.
I do think this matchup is very interesting. I like watching the white
really
blue
cool.
pseudo mirror, and both players know what they're doing, and it's always more interesting when there's that extra layer of both players playing around and knowing the other player is going to play around cards, because it makes cards like Spell Queller just that much more interactive and interesting.
Yeah, not even the pseudo mirror. The actual mirror for that is pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
The Spell Quellers are really interesting too because they're kind of like a house of cards, because if there were too many Spell Quellers, like you take one out, it brings this other thing back, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, we've seen some pretty vicious chains happen.
So Matt Severa getting really aggressive. The whole team's coming in. Ben Rubin's at 13. Remember, this is game 3, and there's a handshake. All right, so Matt Severa moves on to 12-1 here at GP Denver.
So I'm going to analyze that game and say that Matt Severa attacked with everything and won.
Wow, that's great analysis. That's exactly what happened. You were spot on in there. So players over here still shuffling and deciding what they want to bring in. Do you think anything changes too much once they go post board?
I mean, in this kind of matchup, you have cards like Sky Sovereign that provide a bit of a trump. Both players have cards, potentially like Fragmentize because they're efficient and cheap. So you want a combination of like efficient and cheap removal and bombs for like a somewhat stalled game. But you can't go too heavy in either direction. So it's interesting seeing how they balance those cards.
How much does it matter to try to play 2 spells one turn?
It matters a lot because so many of the cards in these decks punish the opponent for not being on the board or for being behind on board, that if you can sequence multiple turns where you get to play 2 spells, then you end up with a pretty big advantage.
So what kind of hands are they looking to keep on their opening 7?
Well, Smuggler's Copter is a big part of it. I mean, that's just one of the better cards in the deck. And Smuggler's Copter, Reflector Mage, Thraben Inspector, these are the kind of cards you're looking for. Calcano has a slight edge in the opening hand department because if he can just curve Gossip Monger into like Thalia's Lieutenant, he's capable of much more aggressive starts than Paul. But Paul's Archangel Avacyn and Console, Sky Sovereign Console Flagship, and Spell Quellers give Paul an advantage if the game goes too long.
Sure, so you think it's more of a matter of does he either go incredibly aggressive or otherwise it's all the other cards that matter in the matchup?
Yeah, basically, Calcano has a better aggressive game and a worse long game, but both players are capable of winning the early or late game. It's not that different. It's not.
Sure.
This isn't mono-red against blue-black control.
All right, yeah, fair enough. So players have drawn their 7. Let's see if they like them. Yep. I think we have a keep on both sides. The Raven Inspector for Calcano. Following up with a Smuggler's Copter. So Calcano is curving out. Oh, and nothing on 2 for Paul Cheon?
Well, not having a 1 or 2 drop on the draw, I mean, that is one way to lose an early game. And Calcano hasn't played any card that is outside of the typical blue-white deck until this all was watching. But for the most part, Calcano is still just pressuring Paul with the cards Paul has seen all weekend.
Yeah, and Calcano following up with an always watching. Raven Inspector gets in that copter. This drops Paul Cheon down to 15. He even gets to loot away one of those lands.
The good thing for Paul here is that I would expect him to have Stasis Snare right now. If he doesn't, then I don't know what his hand was really looking to do.
Yep, and so the Stasis Snare does take the copter. Let's see what Calcano can do to follow up. Another copter.
So that always watching, while it's a powerful card that will have relevance over the course of the game, it is not a threat in and of itself. So when Paul Stasis Snares that first copter, Calcano doesn't actually have that many attackers in play. Paul has 3 Gideons in his hand.
Yeah, he's Gideon flooded.
And actually that always watching pretty relevant when Smuggler's Copter can kill Gideon.
So what do you do here if you're Paul? You have 3 Gideons?
I think you certainly have to play a Gideon. The question is you can +1 it, and then if Calcano doesn't have another creature, he can't kill it. You can emblem it, or you can make a knight, but then the Smuggler's Copter just kills it.
Yeah, so it looks like Gideon number 1 is going to turn into an emblem.
Yeah, Paul has not had the most efficient game. No play on the first 2 turns, snare your 2-drop on turn 3, and then turn 4 make a Gideon emblem with no creatures in play.
Selfless Spirit getting into the Smuggler's Copter. We're going to see an attack. Thalia's Lieutenant. And another Smuggler's Copter there for Calcano.
So Paul has Archangel Avacyn, so next turn he can go Avacyn to kill one of the Smuggler's Copters. It doesn't take that much damage if Calcano doesn't have another way to crew Smuggler's Copter. But if Calcano has a Stasis Snare in hand, this almost kills Paul right away.
So it looks like both Copters are animated and both are attacking.
Oh, I think Calcano has a Spell Shrivel in hand.
I think that's what I saw too. I guess he's boarding into that.
I think Paul's on his way out here, unfortunately.
Oh, this is... Yes, it was Revolutionary Rebuff.
And that drops Paul to 1, and then he's almost assuredly dead now.
Yeah, because now he has, what, a Gideon in hand, a Reflector Mage? Yep, and there's a Handshake, and Christian Calcano improves here to 11-2 from Grand Prix Denver. Wow, he just kind of ran away with it. This is you were. Oh, is it really? So it's Calcano's birthday today, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
A birthday present to himself, maybe top 8ing a Grand Prix here.
That would be very nice.
And it looks like Paul is not en route to add his 3rd GP Denver top 8 to his resume. He top 8'd GP Denver in 2008 and
GP
2014.
Denver, right?
Yep. So he's done it twice, but it's going to be difficult to do it a 3rd time as he's now 10-3.
All right, that's going to do it here for